5 signs. Jesus is seeking you before you even realize. Many people say they found God, but Scripture tells a different story. It's Jesus who finds us first. Before you ever take a single step toward Him, He has already taken 1,000 steps toward you. Before you whisper a prayer, He has already been speaking to your heart. Before you begin searching, He has already been gently drawing you in. The story of the Samaritan woman shows this so clearly. She wasn't looking for God. She wasn't trying to change her life. She wasn't even expecting anything good that day. Yet Jesus chose to walk the long road into Samaria and sit by a well at the exact moment she arrived. It's a beautiful picture of a Savior who pursues us, meeting us in ordinary moments we never thought could be sacred. And maybe, without realizing it, something similar has been happening in your own heart. A quiet tug, a question that won't go away, a verse or a message that reaches you at just the right time, a gentle sense that Jesus is a lot closer than you thought. These things are not accidents. Today we're going to look at 5 signs that Jesus is seeking you, long before you ever realize it. Sign 1. When Jesus walks into the places you never expected Him to. If we could see with spiritual eyes, many of us would be shocked at the places where Jesus has quietly walked into our lives. Not on a big stage, not in a moment when we felt holy or strong, but in the simple, tired, everyday spaces where we were just trying to survive. The Samaritan woman was not at a worship service when Jesus met her. She was at a well, doing a chore she had done 1,000 times before. The Lord chose that exact place, at that exact hour, to sit down and wait for her. He did not ask her to climb up to Him. He came down and sat where she was. That is often how His love works. He steps into the office where you feel unnoticed and drained. He quietly walks into the hospital room, where you are afraid to admit how scared you are. He comes near in the kitchen, in the late-night drive, in the small apartment, where you wonder if anyone really sees you. Long before you say, "I am going to seek God," He has already stepped into the landscape of your ordinary day. Sometimes His arrival looks so normal that we miss it at first. You turn on the radio, and a song speaks straight into something you have been carrying for years. You scroll through your phone and stumble on a message that describes exactly what you are going through. A friend says one simple sentence that lands so deep, you cannot shake it. From the outside, it looks like coincidence. But inside, you sense a gentle knock on the door of your heart. I have seen this again and again. People tell their stories and they rarely say, "I finally climbed high enough to reach God." What they say sounds more like, "I was just driving home from work," or "I was washing the dishes," or "I was sitting alone in my room." And somehow, in that ordinary place, something shifted. Peace brushed past them. Tears came without warning. A calm voice rose within, saying, "I am here." Maybe you are beginning to notice this in your own life. Maybe you have been hearing the same verse from different places. Maybe a phrase from a sermon or a video has stayed with you longer than usual. Maybe you walk into a room and feel a quiet sense that you are not as alone as you thought. When Jesus walks into the places you never expected Him to, it is not to judge you for being there. It is to join you there. He sits beside your well. He meets you on your daily route. He steps into the middle of the situation you wish were different and says, "I know where you are. I chose to come here for you." So let me ask you a simple question. Has there been a moment lately when you quietly felt, "This is different. I cannot explain it, but something holy is brushing against my ordinary life"? If that thought has crossed your mind, do not ignore it. That may be the first sign that Jesus is seeking you, right in the middle of the life you already have. Sign 2. When God puts a question in your heart you didn't plan to ask. There are moments in life when a question rises inside you, and you don't really know where it came from. You were going about your day, thinking about errands, responsibilities, deadlines, and suddenly something shifts within. A quiet wondering appears, not loud enough to startle you, but strong enough to stay with you. It lingers. It follows you from room to room. It makes you pause and look at your life a little differently. That is often how God begins his conversations with us. Not through thunder, not through force, but through a simple question that opens a door. The Samaritan woman had no plan to ask anything spiritual that day. She went to the well for water, nothing more. But as Jesus spoke with her, questions began to rise inside her heart. Questions she never intended to ask. Questions she didn't even know she needed. What is this living water? Why does he speak as if he knows me? Could he really be the one we have been waiting for? One gentle question awakened another, and before she realized it, her heart was in dialogue with God. You may have felt something similar. You go to work like usual, but on the way home, a thought comes, why do I feel this emptiness? Or maybe you look at your blessings and ask, why do I still feel like something is missing? Sometimes the question is even simpler. Is God trying to tell me something? These questions are not random. They are invitations. They are the Lord's way of drawing your attention to a deeper place inside your soul. I have heard many people share their testimonies, and the pattern is remarkably consistent. They rarely say, I decided to be spiritual. Instead they say, I don't know why, but lately I've been thinking about God. Or I keep asking myself things I never cared about before. That is how the Spirit works, by awakening a curiosity that feels both familiar and completely new. Maybe this has happened to you in small ways. First, a verse comes to mind even though you haven't read the Bible in a long time. You hear someone mention forgiveness, and something inside you softens. You watch a video about faith, not because you planned to, but because it somehow found its way to you. And you think, why did this touch me the way it did? Why now? When God places a question in your heart, it is not to confuse you, it is to guide you. His questions are gentle invitations into clarity, peace, and purpose. They pull you away from the noise and bring you back to the deeper truth of who you are and who He is. You don't have to have all the answers. The fact that you are even asking the question is already a sign that something sacred is happening. So take a moment and notice. Has a question been following you lately? A quiet wondering that will not leave you alone? If so, breathe deeply. Do not push it aside. That question may be the voice of Jesus, starting a conversation with your soul, long before you realized He had already drawn near. Sign 3. When God confronts the wound you've been avoiding. There are seasons when God gently places His hand on an area of your life you hoped would stay hidden, not to shame you, not to expose you, but to free you. Most of us carry places in our hearts where we would rather not look too closely. Old disappointments, unspoken regrets, habits we keep promising ourselves we will fix someday. We learn to live around these wounds as if they were pieces of furniture in a familiar room. We don't like them, but we've grown used to walking around them. The Samaritan woman did the same. When Jesus asked her to bring her husband, He was not trying to embarrass her. He was inviting her to bring her real story into His presence. The part she didn't talk about, the pieces she didn't know how to heal, 5 broken relationships, and another one she wasn't proud of. It wasn't condemnation, it was compassion. Jesus touched the wound she had buried, not with judgment, but with truth that carried tenderness. Sometimes God does this with us through a quiet conviction, not a harsh voice, not fear, just a gentle awareness that something in our life needs light. Maybe it's a habit that has been draining your peace. Maybe it's a relationship that pulls you away from who you were meant to be. Maybe it's a pattern of thinking that keeps you small, anxious, or guarded. You sense it, not as guilt, but as an invitation to step into a healthier, freer place. I've heard people describe this moment in surprisingly similar ways. They say, I don't know why, but I feel like God is asking me to face this, or I've ignored this for years, but now it keeps coming back to my mind. That's not coincidence. That's not pressure. That's the shepherd calling your name, guiding you toward a place where your heart can finally breathe again. Sometimes the confrontation comes through unexpected moments. A conversation with a friend suddenly makes you realize how weary your soul has become. A sermon lands on the exact issue you've been avoiding. A quiet thought whispers, "You don't have to carry this anymore." And for the first time you wonder what life might look like without that burden. When Jesus confronts your hidden wound, he is not pointing at your failure. He is pointing at your future. He is revealing the one place that has been keeping you from becoming whole. He does not approach it with a spotlight of shame, but with the steady warmth of healing. Truth can sting at first, but in his hands, truth becomes medicine. So let me ask you gently, has there been something you keep feeling nudged to address? A pattern you know isn't good for you? A part of your story you've tried to forget? If it keeps rising to the surface, don't be afraid. That may be the loving touch of Jesus, guiding you toward freedom. He isn't trying to reopen your pain. He is trying to close the wound for good. Sign 4. When you notice a softening in your heart that you can't explain. There are times in life when something gentle begins to happen inside you, and you're not even sure when it started. You find yourself moved by things that never touched you before. A verse lands differently. A moment of quiet feels strangely comforting. A worship song stirs something deep, even though you weren't looking for anything spiritual. It's not dramatic. It's not emotional in the loud sense. It's simply a softening, a quiet shift of the heart that feels both surprising and familiar. The Samaritan woman experienced this too. At first she resisted Jesus. Her answers were guarded. Her tone was cautious. But as the conversation went on, her heart began to open. Curiosity replaced defensiveness. Hope slipped through the cracks. A softness she didn't expect began to rise. This is often how God works. Not by pushing, not by overwhelming, but by gently turning your heart in his direction. Many people assume spiritual growth begins with effort, but more often it begins with a subtle readiness we didn't create ourselves. You start sensing a peace you didn't work for. You begin wanting things that are good for your soul. You feel drawn to honesty, to kindness, to simplicity, to truth. And you wonder, why am I changing like this? What is happening to me? This quiet softening is one of the clearest signs that Jesus is drawing near. When God moves, he rarely shouts. He whispers. He nudges. He breathes calm into places that used to feel tight. He opens windows in rooms you thought were locked. He begins healing the soil of your heart, long before you ever see the fruit. I've spoken with people who said, "I don't know why, but I feel more open to God lately." Or I used to brush off things like prayer or scripture, but now I feel drawn to them. They didn't force this change. It happened like spring after a long winter. Quiet, steady, unmistakable. Maybe you've felt this too. Maybe you find yourself thinking about God at random times. Maybe tears rise more easily. Not out of sadness, but out of recognition. Something inside you feels seen. Maybe you've noticed your defenses lowering, your hope returning, or your fear loosening its grip. These are not small things. These are signs of movement, signs of presence, signs of grace, doing its quiet work. And here's the beauty when God softens your heart. It's never to make you weak. It's to make you whole. A soft heart can hear better, see clearer, love deeper. A soft heart is strong in a way the world does not understand. It is a heart prepared to receive what God has been wanting to give you all along. So take a moment and ask yourself, has your heart felt different lately? Not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle shift toward peace, truth, or openness. If so, don't ignore it. That softening may be the tender hand of Jesus, gently turning your heart back toward him, one quiet moment at a time. Sign 5. When you feel a desire to share what you've experienced, one of the most beautiful signs that Jesus is seeking you is this. Something good begins to awaken inside you, and before you even realize it, you want to share it, not because someone told you to, not because you are trying to be religious, but because something true has touched your heart, and it feels too meaningful to keep to yourself. This happened to the Samaritan woman. The moment she encountered Jesus, she came to the well carrying a water jar and a heavy story, but she left with something entirely different. A sense of hope that overflowed. She didn't attend a class, memorize a sermon, or study a method. She simply ran back to her village and said, "Come and see." That was all. Just an honest invitation born from a heart that had finally tasted something real. When God moves in your life, even in small ways, that same desire often rises in you. You might think of someone who needs encouragement. You might feel a gentle urge to pray for a friend. You might hear yourself saying words of hope you didn't plan to say. Your heart begins turning outward, not because you are trying to be impressive, but because love naturally wants to flow toward others. I've seen this with people who are just beginning their walk with God. Even before they feel knowledgeable or confident, something inside them stirs. They say, "I don't know much, but I want my family to feel this peace too." Or "I wish my friend could hear this message." Or "I hope someone I love finds what I'm finding." This desire is not pressure. It's evidence. Evidence that Jesus is already working within you. Sometimes sharing doesn't look dramatic. It can be as simple as sending a verse to someone you care about. It can be a small prayer whispered for a person who comes to mind. It can be choosing kindness in a moment, when it would be easier not to. These simple gestures reveal that your heart is no longer closed in on itself. It has been opened, expanded, awakened. And here is the grace in it. God never asks you to share from a place of perfection. He invites you to share from a place of transformation. Even the smallest spark of faith can light a path for someone else. Even a quiet word of encouragement can begin healing in another heart. When Jesus touches you, the touch rarely stops with you. It moves through you. So take a moment and notice. Is there someone you've been thinking about more often lately? Someone you feel drawn to pray for or support? Someone you wish could taste the same peace that has begun forming in your own heart? These gentle desires are not random. They may be the final sign that Jesus is not only seeking you, but also preparing to use your life, your story, your growth, your renewed hope, to reach someone else. When God awakens a desire to share, it is because something sacred has already begun within you. Pay attention to that desire. It may be the first step of a beautiful journey, both for you and for the people whose lives you are meant to touch. Conclusion. When you look back at these 5 signs, you may realize something gentle and beautiful. Jesus has been closer to your life than you ever imagined. Not pushing, not demanding, not overwhelming you with pressure, but quietly weaving his presence into ordinary moments. Simple questions, hidden places, softened emotions, and new desires that rise from within. Long before you thought about seeking him, he had already been seeking you. Just as he waited for the Samaritan woman at the well, he meets us in places that do not feel special, on our daily routes, in our small routines, in the parts of our story we rarely talk about. He does not wait for us to become perfect. He meets us where we are, and from that place he gently leads us toward who we were always meant to be. If one of these signs has stirred something in your heart today, a memory, a question, a sense of peace, or a quiet pull, receive it with gratitude. These moments are not accidents. They are invitations. They are reminders that the God who created you is also the God who pursues you with patience and kindness. You do not need eloquent prayers. You do not need to have everything figured out. All Jesus needs is a heart that whispers, even softly, even uncertainly, "Lord, I'm here," and he will take it from there. He always does. So as we close, take a slow breath and let this truth settle inside you. You are not reaching for God alone. He has been reaching for you all along. And today may be one of those sacred moments when you finally begin to notice